It started with a knock on the door. Loud, sharp, the kind of knock that doesn't wait for permission. Jamal Carter was 19, just back from a late shift at the gas station, microwaving leftover noodles in his mother's kitchen. The year was 2002. The neighborhood was rough, but Jamal stayed clear of trouble. He worked. He helped his siblings with homework. He had dreams, law school dreams, big ones. But that knock changed everything. Within 15 minutes, Jamal was handcuffed in his own driveway. A neighbor had been assaulted 2 streets down. A wallet was stolen. The victim was in critical condition, and someone had said the attacker was a black male, 6 feet, hoodie, thin build. That described 100 people in his neighborhood. But Jamal was the one the police grabbed. He protested. His mother screamed, but the officers didn't care. They said they had a witness, that his face looked familiar. By the time the case went to court, Jamal's public defender had seen him twice. The witness recanted, then changed their story. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, no video footage, just vague descriptions and fear. The jury took 3 hours. Guilty. Jamal was sentenced to 25 years for aggravated assault and robbery. He was 19. The first 2 years were survival. He was jumped twice, spent 3 weeks in solitary after breaking a chair during a panic attack, missed his grandmother's funeral, got used to the cold clang of iron, the smell of bleach and sweat. But Jamal didn't disappear. He started reading, obsessively. Law books, old trial transcripts, the U.S. Constitution, even the prison rule book. He'd always been curious, but now he had a mission. He wanted to understand how he got here and how the system had allowed it. Then one day, an older inmate named Reggie said, "You're not just smart, man. You got that fire. Help us write these grievances." So Jamal did. He wrote letters, complaints, appeals for himself and others. Inmates started calling him counsel. He got his GED in 9 months, then started correspondence college through a legal education nonprofit. He aced every course. A retired judge who volunteered through the education program read Jamal's essay. She was so impressed, she mailed him her annotated copy of Gideon's Trumpet. She underlined a passage: "Every person, however poor, should be entitled to the best defense possible." Jamal wept, reading it. By year 7, Jamal had helped overturn 2 wrongful convictions inside. He wasn't a lawyer, not yet, but he was relentless. He even started teaching a legal literacy class in the prison library. "Know Your Rights," he called it. It became so popular, the warden expanded it. He filed motion after motion challenging his own conviction, but each was denied. No new evidence, no procedural error. It was like screaming into a locked room. Then, in year 11, a podcast journalist doing a story on wrongful incarceration found Jamal's case. She requested records, found inconsistencies, interviewed the original witness. The story aired. It went viral. Pressure mounted. A pro bono legal team stepped in. On August 4th, 2014, after 4,389 days, Jamal's conviction was vacated. He walked out of prison with a backpack, a degree in legal studies, and a vision. He would go to law school. He would pass the bar, and he would make the system face him. But freedom wasn't easy. He had no credit history, no car, no apartment, a felony record that technically still existed while his name was being cleared, and the shadow of prison trauma followed him everywhere. Still, he studied, worked construction by day, studied at night. He got into law school on a scholarship meant for formerly incarcerated students, aced every course. A retired judge who volunteered through the education program read Jamal's essay. She was so impressed, she mailed him her annotated copy of Gideon's Trumpet. She underlined a passage: "Every person, however poor, should be entitled to the best defense possible." Jamal wept, reading it. And when he walked into the courtroom again, years later, he wasn't in handcuffs. He was wearing a robe. Because Jamal Carter had just been appointed as a state judge.
The bar exam was brutal. 3 days of non-stop testing, all written in a language of statutes, precedents, and cold logic. Diego sat in the exam room, surrounded by young students fresh out of law school. He was the only one with calloused hands from prison labor, the only one who had studied by flashlight under concrete walls. And yet, he passed. The headline in the local paper read, "Ex-inmate passes bar exam after studying in prison for 12 years. It made waves, inspired forums, caught the eye of legal advocacy groups. But Diego didn't care for the attention. He had clients to defend, people with stories like his. His first case? A young man wrongfully accused of theft. The prosecution relied on circumstantial evidence. Diego exposed the cracks in the case with calm, relentless precision. The verdict? Not guilty. Whispers followed him in court hallways. That's the guy who used to be in prison. He's the one who defended that boy for free. He didn't mind. He knew what it felt like to be dismissed. And now he made it his mission to make sure no one else would suffer that same silence. Years passed. Diego built a name. Not just as the lawyer who rose from prison walls, but as the one who won impossible cases, who showed up at public hearings, who taught evening classes on criminal justice reform. He was offered a position on a legal review board, then a fellowship to write about prison reform, then, shockingly, a nomination to become a judge. The idea was almost laughable. A man who once stood trial, now sitting on the bench? But the public backed him. The Bar Association backed him. And the very prosecutor who once doubted his abilities wrote a letter of recommendation. Diego Rocha was appointed as a circuit judge at the age of 39. The same courtroom where he had once been sentenced now welcomed him in a robe. On his first day, he looked out at the gallery. Not many people knew what he was thinking, but he did. Justice doesn't start with power. It starts with pain and the will to make sure no one else suffers it in silence. Weeks later, a case came before him. A young man, 19 years old, accused of assault, evidence thin, motive unclear. Diego read the file. He knew this story. He had lived it. But he didn't recuse himself. He followed the facts, pressed the attorneys, demanded clarity. In the end, the young man was acquitted. Another life saved. Another cycle broken. After court that day, the young man approached him, tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Your Honor. I thought no one would believe me." Diego simply nodded. "I believed you before you even spoke." Today, Diego Rocha continues his work from the bench. He runs legal outreach programs inside prisons. He funds scholarships for inmates studying law. He visits schools and tells kids, "I made mistakes. I was failed, but I refused to disappear." His story is now a best-selling book, Convicted to Conviction, My Journey Through Bars and Justice. And whenever someone asks him why he still keeps a tattered copy of the Brazilian Constitution in his chambers, he replies, "Because when everything else was taken from me, that was the only proof I still mattered." If Diego's story moved you, subscribe to Resilient Stories, because sometimes the most powerful justice is born from injustice.